Hello everyone, let's get back into the game. So here's how it looks now. We can draw some stuff and we can add some doors, maybe draw some floors underneath that, make some walls. I'm just gonna, even though it doesn't look right, I'm just gonna do it like this. Let's make a starting point in here and then we can start. And as you can see, you cannot walk through the door, you cannot walk through the walls, but you can go up to a door and you can open it and you can go through. So I kind of picked the wrong sprite, so it opens the wrong way, but whatever. Okay, another thing we can do is add some enemies. So let's put a couple of enemies here. And that crashed, so that's great. We'll have to look into that, but not right now. So let's just do something like this. Can zoom out a bit. Add a couple of enemies, add a door. Now this should work. Okay, unfortunately I can see that's kind of an issue, but whatever. So you can see now the enemies are trying to attack me. I can open the door and now they can also go in. I can kind of like kill them like that. And we have the backbone of almost all the features you would want. The last thing I want to add before I start working a bit on it off screen is friendly entities, basically summons. And right now we don't have a lot of sprites, but let's take a look at this one, or maybe it's two. So just for now, I want to use this one as the friendly summon. And the ID of that, I shouldn't have closed it. That is kind of like sprite number 367. So it's index 7 is that one. That's going to be the friendly summon. So to add support for that, let's go to the level data. The level data. Right now we have the entities, and really we should have it to do rename to enemy. Enemies. And now we are going to rename to, yeah, that's fine. So now let's add some summons. They should also be kind of in the level, I think. So let's say summons and summon count. And maybe we want to also keep track of a number of dead summons. So let's call it number of dead summons. Number of dead enemies. I think I like that better. Right, so, by the way, before I forget, let me see if I can reproduce that bug. So we go here, that's fine. Go back in the editor, replace an enemy. And that was not an issue. How about we place this one? Still not a problem. Okay, I don't know how to reproduce that. Anyway, what was I saying? So now we have some summons in principle. Let's first get the editor updated, because we have here create level data and we just added a bunch of stuff. So let's initialize summons. And for now, it's just going to be 0 and null, and also num dead summons is 0. And it's not end summons, it's summons count. Really, we should also have a like a capacity. Like this should be a dynamic array. So let's add that for now. And go back into the editor and let's say level data, summon capacity is just, let's not go too crazy. Let's say 128. Then we can malloc it here, and it is not a summon, it's just an entity. Level, summon count, summon capacity. Now I'm gonna call it with an S because that makes a little bit more consistent. Okay. So now we have some summons, we have some capacity. And let's just check that it runs just for... Okay, here we go. I can interact with the door. Amazing. Let's go back here and let's add a couple of enemies. Okay, so now it happened. Malloc invalid size. Okay, so let's put a to-do on that. All this I'm just gonna remove. So, wait. Yeah, I'm just gonna remove that. So fix bug where malloc fails. If you first create a level with, I think it's, you need a door. Somehow it's the door that's doing it. So here we go, that's all fine. I can do this, can go back here, place an enemy. And no, that was fine as well. So let's place a door, go in, interact with it, go out, and then can do something like this. That's also fine. So do you need something like this? Also fine. Let's start over. So I did this, I did this. We had a door, and that was fine to do it like this. We go back here, we put down an enemy. Also fine. What if I put down a door? I go in here. Actually, let's do it like that. I go in here, and then now I place an enemy. Okay. I don't know. With some floors, walls, and doors. Then play, then edit, add an enemy, something like that. I'll figure that out later. Okay, there was just one annoying thing I have to do, which is when you select a character, we should really do this function editor, deselect everything on the editor, and then I shouldn't need this. So I'm just adding that item selected is false, which is exactly what I want. So now if I place a door and then place an enemy, everything's good. Okay. So now there's some summons. I guess we should then... Let's make a way to add a summon. So we'll do that in the game loop, and it's going to be one of these controls. And we're going to say if is key released. And it's going to be key C. I don't think that's doing anything yet. No, so we'll just use C for now. It's obviously not final. Then we're going to say if, not editor, but if level. What do we have available here? Okay, so level summons count is 0. Then we will add one and not do that. So if we have no summons, we're going to add one, and we will just add it at the player's position, but it has to be an entity. So that means we need a sprite. So how do we do a sprite? Here is some names. So the problem is we don't really know how to load a sprite from a single... Well, I suppose we can do it manually. Maybe that's just what we should do. So let's do that. So let's say summon sprite, we put a sprite on the heap, and summon sprite images is one image. And what are we going to load? We're going to load assets. Character and tile set .png. I wonder, so the problem is, well, let's just try to do it, and then we can see what the problem is. We need one texture, and then we just need to load the texture from the image. One frame duration, that is not a thing, but rather frames per frame. We can set that to 1, I guess. And flip x is false. And then this is the sprite. So now we need the entity. Didn't mean to do that. Entity. I suppose that has to be... We can do it like... Whoa. Whoops. Okay, so the sprite is this thing. The position is player. Summon it next to the player, that's fine. Velocity 0. Health is... Why don't we set it to like 5? Let's set it to 3. It's not dead. Is it attacking? It's not attacking. Is it invincible? Then we need this thing. So how do I normally do that? it like this. And collision box is one tile. I think we normally do this. This should probably be a constant somewhere, but there's the collision box. What is the entity ID? What is the entity ID? How do we get that? Normally we say get next ID. Can I just do it like this? And then we're gonna say this. I think that's good. That is good. Let's see if it even runs, and it doesn't even compile, which is great. Collision, what is it even complaining about? It's a pointer. And there is no semicolon there. And there's no semicolon here. Okay, compiles. Let's try to run it. So now I'm pressing C. And it's loading some stuff, which is great. It's trying to load some stuff. So this is obviously wrong. We need dungeon character. Is it characters? No, it's just character 2. So if I do this, then it's segfaults. Okay, but now it's able to load something. I wonder why it segfaulted to begin with. I think I know why. It's because when we make the level in the demo room, we forgot to do this thing. And it's just called data here. So if we do this and we go here, it doesn't work because of that. And something else. Right. Okay, now I can summon something. Okay, so now we can actually add summons to the level, but they are not animated or anything. So what we need to do is to, when we draw the level, we draw tiles, we draw items, we draw entities. So let's say draw enemies. And now we're gonna draw summons. And it's basically this. I thought it was, and it's called summons count. Okay, let me go out here and let me press C. And I don't know what happened. Another thing is it's actually it's because we need to say increase the count. So we need to say state level dot summons count. Great. Okay, and it's just summoning this guy, which is not really what I wanted, but it's also not completely wrong. Let me check in Raylib when we go to load image. Do we have anything like where we load from a specific place in an image? Maybe we do that in the draw call, and then there's an animate function, which I think is in here. Animate, no. Ah, it's here. So this one always just draws from the top left. So let's change it because I don't want to look at that. It's kind of like a bold priest. Don't want to look at that. So what we're gonna do is character and tile set. Now we're gonna assets and character animation and monsters idle, and we're gonna get the skull. Even though it's technically an enemy, we're gonna get that guy. So let me say, can I do something like this? Assets, character animation, monsters idle, skull v1, skull. Okay, here we go. So let's grab that and put it in here. So now it's a skull and it has the red outline, which is kind of unintentionally nice. But since we've done that, we might as well add the animation of this guy, which I'm just kind of like doing this horrible hard coding, but just ignore that. Please ignore that. Just trying to get things working. So we have 4 frames, and how many frames per frame? I think we normally use 10. So now it's animating. Seems to be slightly faster, but maybe we use 8. Oh, sorry, we use 15. I could just look, so why don't I do that? It should be in sprite, I suppose. frames per frame. Great. Here we're using 10. Okay, so let me use 10 here as well. There we go. So now we have this guy, but you can see he's not doing anything. So let's add a small AI to him. And you know what? Another thing we can do just before we do that, let's say if the summon count is less than the summons capacity, then we that's useless. Then we'll add another summon. So now if I go here, I should be able to just put down a bunch of guys. And really we should reuse this. So let's say to do reuse loaded images when creating new summons of the same type. So that's probably something we want to do in general, because to do make a global cache of images that entities use to look up images and textures, let's say. Because every time we make an entity like this, they all separately load the same image and the same texture. So that's obviously a bit silly, but that's an optimization that we'll do later. So now we can just add a bunch of summons up to 128, and they are drawn, but they are not updated. They are not updated. So let's do update summons. We need the level because we need the location of the enemies so they can go towards an enemy. And I am not sure how we're going to do that. So let's start by copying this code. Update summons. Okay, summons count. This is going to be summon. Summons. If the summon is dead, we just continue. If the summon health is less than 0, then it's dead, and number of dead summons is increased. Just let me check something. Yes. Okay. So what is the AI? Actually, what we want is move towards closest enemy. So that's tricky because we just doing it in a simple way is to say for int, let's say enemy IDX 0, enemy IDX less than leveled entity, entity count. Okay, I'm really annoyed by this naming. Let's call it EIDX. So then we have to loop through all of them to find the closest. So let's go ahead and say vector2 enemy position is the position, and then we're going to say yeah, whatever. And the distance is we don't really need the square root, and it's just gonna slow us down, so let's remove that. Let me actually do it like this. So let's spread it out a bit. So we're gonna say delta x, delta y, and how about this? Looks pretty good. Now, if the distance is less than this, we store that. So we should also store the closest position, whatever, and we do like that. Problem is, if we have a lot of entities, this is going to be slow because it will scale as like the number of summons times the number of entities. We can probably do stuff. Like, at least I think we're going to have to. So let's say to do use a quad tree. Exactly. We need something called a quad tree to do efficient lookup of spatial data. But that is not now. That is for another time. Okay, so now we have to say, okay, is the summon position less than the closest position, dot x? If it is, then we do that. And here I can just replace entity with, actually I can probably do that all the way here. So let's say entity is actually summon. And player position is actually closest position. So there we go. We normalize the velocity, so now I have to say entity is summon. And then we update the summon. And this update function is right up here, and it is just collisions. I think I wrote that. Yeah. Try to move entity, check for collisions. Okay. Now we also need to resolve attacks on it. So let's look at the attacks, and this is the same logic, so we're just going to keep that copy-pasted. This one we can replace the entity with summon. And now this one is interesting, because now we have to check for collisions with enemies. And because we'll have to loop over enemies again, I kind of think we need to just put it up here. So we don't want the player collision, we want the summon collision. And then we want the enemy collision. So that thing we're going to move down here. So let's say the first thing is find closest enemy for summon to move towards. Yeah, sure. Then we are gonna check for collisions while we're looping through enemies anyway. Register any attacks. And the interesting thing about this system that I came up with that I didn't think about is that it's kind of symmetric. So if a summon is attacking an enemy, the enemy can also attack the summon. So let's go up here and say enemy. And let's call entity, let's rename that to enemy instead. Then if they are colliding, now we want to register an attack on both summon and enemy. And we're also going to have a to-do. We're going to have a to-do, which I need to think about. Right, so it's kind of like a player is attacking them both. So what we should do is the same thing that we do in animate, where we do this register attack on. So we should say register attack on the summon by the enemy, and the damage is 5. Okay. I don't know, what is this 5? So now register attack on damage. Do we actually use that? I'm not sure we use that. So sorry. So let's go into update entities. If the attack is active, okay, I do subtract the damage here. Right, so that's the player damage. So let's say the enemy damage is actually 1, whatever. Then we register another attack on the enemy from the summon, and we'll say that that is 2. Okay, let's see, it doesn't compile, of course. And let me just a little bit more easily see what the problems are. Okay, so here we go. Check the summon collision. Right. Don't want that, we just want it like this. So we have that, so let me check now, 262. We don't have enemies, we are doing it for the summon. And the summon. And it's running. So now let me put in a couple of summons, and you can see he's slowly moving towards the enemies. So I think that's pretty cool. Let's add a couple of enemies here. Put the starting point over here. And that's it. So now if I add some summons, they will just go to their death. But they are kind of slowly killing. Right, so we made another mistake, which is that in here, if the enemy is... So let's put this guy up here. So we can also replace it here, because why not? Okay, so if the enemy is dead, we can and should skip processing that guy. And now the summons won't die randomly. Kind of confused why they have a velocity at all. Right. So actually here, because there's no closest, we need to say it's kind of like, it's pretty janky, but let's do it anyway. So if closest distance is this thing, then the velocity is 0. So now I just kill those, and now it should not move at all. Yeah. Okay, so the summons are quite weak. So just to make it a little bit more interesting, well, actually that was just where I was. Let's give them a bit more velocity. So float, summon speed. Let's double their speed. Then here, let's, instead of this, let's say we multiply, and we multiply by the speed divided by the length. And now let's go into the editor. Let's do this and restart. They don't feel fast still. And maybe like if we have this kind of like, it's almost like a kamikaze thing. We should probably have some kind of animation when the enemies die, I think, and the summons die. Another thing is now there's no enemies, so probably we should have them just circling around the player or something like that. So to do, if there are no more enemies, then make summons. But anyway, 2 was not very impressive. Let's really crank it up now to 10. And we'll do that. It's a bit too much. Let's do 5. And anyway, the summons are also the enemies are also quite slow. But I think that's it. That's it for this video. Because check this out. We can make a nice little room, nice little level, quite fast. Let me delete that. We can make a level. Look at this beautiful level. Can add a couple of doors. Here's a door, here's another door. Let's add some floors, why not? Usually dungeons have floors. And now I need to zoom out to see anything. We can add some enemies. We can put in a little starting point. And here we go. Basically, we have a game now. It's not very fun, and the AI is kind of janky, but it's almost a game. Okay, so that's gonna do it for this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.